An incremental budget uses the previous year's budget, or the actual results, as a starting point, and adds or subtracts an incremental amount to cover inflation and other known changes. This would be commonly applied within stable organisations, where costs and revenues are not expected to change significantly from one period to the next. Hence, strong cost control should exist, and discretionary expenditure should be limited. Incremental budgeting is commonly used within the public sector. Advantages of incremental budgeting might include: they are easy to understand and take very little time to prepare. There is very little change from one period to the next, which facilitates organisational planning. Incremental budgeting allows departmental managers to operate on a consistent basis, where only the budgetary change would need to be justified. Also, the impact of any budgetary change can be seen very quickly. Disadvantages of incremental budgeting: any problems or inefficiencies or budgetary slack are carried forward from the prior year. No effort is made to eliminate these. Under incremental budgeting, employees are not incentivized to improve on last year's performance, perhaps reduce costs or suggest ideas for potential new products. In fact, incremental budgeting encourages spending up to the budgeted amount, in order to ensure that the budget is maintained for the following year. Incremental budgeting assumes working methods will continue unchanged. It is possible that the budget will become outdated and no longer relate to the nature of the work undertaken by that company. Zero-based budgeting requires that each cost element must be justified, as though the activities to which the budget relates are being undertaken for the first time. Unless each activity is approved, then there is a zero budget allowance. Zero-based budgeting can be broken into 3 steps. Step 1 is to define a decision unit. Here, detailed descriptions of each item of activity or expenditure are put forward. This should be done in a manner that allows the decision unit to be compared to other decision units. These activities refer to all of the various items that need to be budgeted for. Step 2 is to evaluate and rank the activities. Each decision unit is then reviewed and ultimately ranked based on its benefits and importance to the organisation. Some activities will be obligated, for example spending on health and safety, or certain tax obligations, while others will be seen as more discretionary, for example training of staff, research and development expenditure, Christmas party spending. Step 3 is to allocate the budget resource. The budget resource is allocated to the items in ranking order until the available resources are all used. Advantages of zero-based budgeting include: it should ensure that resources are allocated efficiently to where they are most needed. Zero-based budgeting should detect inflated budgets and ensure that budgetary slack or waste is identified and eliminated. Zero-based budgeting forces managers to improve their knowledge and understanding of the costs within the organisation, and thus drive managers to find out cost-effective ways to reduce those costs and improve operations. Zero-based budgeting can be seen to increase staff motivation by providing greater initiative and responsibility in decision-making. Disadvantages of zero-based budgeting. By its nature, zero-based budgeting is time-consuming and expensive. Staff training may be required to successfully implement the process. It can be difficult to define decision units. Not all activities or expenditure items can be comfortably labelled and defined. Zero-based budgeting is a rigid process, and it may neglect the focus on long-term goals. The Research and Development Department may find it more difficult to justify each item of expenditure, for example. Management can feel demotivated at having to continuously justify each activity or item of expenditure, or due to the time spent implementing the zero-based budgeting process. The advantages and disadvantages of incremental budgeting are often the opposite, to the advantages and disadvantages of zero-based budgeting. An organisation may be trying to decide which of the two budgetary systems to adopt. They could consider a bargained or compromised approach. Incremental budgeting could be used every year, and then zero-based budgeting applied in year 4 or year 5, or perhaps when the organisation undergoes some significant change. Or an organisation may decide to apply zero-based budgeting to some departments, but not all, depending on what management thinks is most appropriate for those departments. It may not be worthwhile to apply zero-based budgeting to light and heating expenses, for example, or to the entire budget of the health and safety department. Hence, the organisation could benefit from some of the advantages of zero-based budgeting without the annual cost and time implications.